Going on, everyone? John Matrix here. We're going to be jumping into the finale of the Mamjul Korar part of this red tape series here from the exploring series. We're in part 5 here, so links will be down below as always in the description to the playlist here. So if you want to watch the original videos without my commentary and reaction, feel free to go over there and do so. Be sure to give the videos a like if you enjoy it. And if you enjoy the content that the Exploring series puts out and you haven't hit that sub button, do me a favor, please. Hit that sub button on his channel and give the man some support. He definitely deserves it. If you'd like to join us as I'm doing these reactions live like I am right now, love to have you guys come in and hang out. Add your 2 cents and yeah, just join our discussion. There is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description. The YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I have to offer. So been around the channel for a while, you want to take your sport to the next level, check all that stuff out. But yeah, other than that, you know, if you enjoy this video of mine, consider leaving a like and a sub. It helps me in the channel grow, and lets me in the YouTube algorithm know that you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see some more. So thank you guys very much for taking the time out of your busy day, come in, hang out, watch the video. This will be, again, this is the finale of the Mamjul Korar part of this red tape series. So like I said, I've been putting them out as individual videos, but once I get done with the finale here, I will put them all together into all of their powers will combine into Captain Mamjul Korar super long reaction planet video. So I'll have a super long video that'll have all of these parts put together. So if you just want to watch them in one super long video, that'll be available. I'll get that up as soon as possible. But a lot said, let's jump in the video. Again, this is going to be part 5 of the SCP-001 Mamjul Korar series here for the red tape series. So yeah, let's just jump right on in it here. Volume up, let's go.
SCP-001 Mamjul and Korar Part 5.
Where are the volume
The
on his
Foundation's
videos?
investigation into the fallen Davic Empire has so far been largely unhelpful when it comes to their concerns with the Church of the Broken God and the Abominate. They've learned now how exactly Mamjul and the Covenant fell, as the three-prong army, led by the Black Star, swept across Asia after crushing Amani Ram, easily beating back the Davites and sending them into retreat. The Black Star,
which the stuff haven't really told us exactly what the Abominate is. Right now, from everything, it seems like it has something to do with the moon and maybe some kind of, you know, lunar eclipse of some sort. But yeah, I mean, it seems like the power really is in the Black Star, who is the avatar of the Abominate, and the Black Star, out of everybody, seems to be incredibly powerful. Seems to be, you know, a reality bender of potentially, you know, at least for their time, you know, maybe unparalleled ability, power, whatever. He was able to essentially sink an entire continent just using his reality bending abilities, etc., etc. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where things are going to go with that. If we're going to learn anything more about the Black Star, who he was originally. So far, the lore that we've learned about him feels very kind of Lord-borny, Dark Souls-ish, with themes of surviving, survival of the fittest, you know, almost also kind of like Berserk's, you know, Eclipse vibes with the moon and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So very interesting. But anyways, continue.
a reality bender empowered by his god, the Abominate, was able to sink an entire continent and
I thought they said in the previous video he was maybe a level 5 or 6 reality bender or something like that.
wipe all of the Davites' history, culture, and identity from the records. What's more, the remaining Deva, residing in the astral plane, are now also facing their end of days, as the Scarlet Maharaja is no longer able to support the dream that they reside in, and no one is willing to take his place.
Which I think, I don't remember the guy's name, it's not Galanus, but the soldier who's kind of like Galanus's right-hand man, who's been going to the meetups with the Empress of the Davites. You know, at the end of the last video, he kind of got separated from his body. There was some kind of malfunction with the technology that they were using to astral project themselves into this dream city in the astral plane. He got separated from his body and was put into a coma. I feel like that's something, to me, it feels like that's something that the Davites are purposely doing to try to get him to be a replacement so that they can save their astral city. But we'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong.
Now, in the final part, we'll see the Foundation and the research team dealing with disaster not in the past, but in the present. Let's continue. 2 hours and 44 minutes into Galanis' projection, as they learned about the fall of Mamjul, the various sonar equipment placed in Mamjul's ruins by the diving team began reporting localized underwater disturbances. At the same time, several covert monitoring buoys that had been spread in concentric circles around the location began pinging the bridge of the FMS Phantom, reporting multiple unknown objects detected in the vicinity. Personnel from the Phantom quickly contacted Overwatch Command, reporting the situation, informing them that they have reports of multiple unidentified flying objects moving southeast at high velocity towards the ships. The objects are moving in excess of 450 kilometers per hour.
Yikes.
And are en route to arrive in 13 minutes. Overwatch Command tells them to activate Protocol Westchester and patch them through to Captain Hickman. Video logs show various researchers and personnel in the mess hall eating meals and engaging in casual chatter. They are suddenly interrupted by alarms sounding throughout the ship and lights flashing red. Security personnel, both ship security and Alpha 1 troops, spread out in the large room and firmly escort researchers and other personnel to their assigned quarters. Throughout the rest of the vessels, similar experiences unfold as bulkheads are sealed and researchers are packed into their labs and sleeping quarters. In the psychotronics lab, several Alpha 1 personnel move in, sealing the door behind them, and take up defensive positions around the bodies of Galanis and Greaves. The remaining security personnel quickly move through the facility, grabbing weaponry from armories and opening crates from storage rooms to hand out.
Did you just donate $200, dude? What are you doing, Howard? Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, dude. Holy shit. Yeah, thank you. I don't know what to say, but yeah. Thank you for all your continued support, brother. Appreciate it.
Out rifles.
Oh, it's $19. I was gonna say.
After receiving weapons, a number of
I was gonna say that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But hey, regardless, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Obviously, you don't have to do that at all, but I greatly appreciate the continued support, man. You know, just being a member and coming in and hanging out and watching the videos. That's more than enough. So appreciate you as always, brother.
Quickly move through the facility, grabbing weaponry from armories and opening crates from storage rooms to hand out rifles. After receiving weapons, a number of personnel make their way to the top deck, while others go lower. Across the top deck, sailors, security personnel, and Alpha 1 operatives move to battle stations, activating and loading chain gun emplacements and cannons arranged across the top of the Phantom. A number of large hatches pop open, filling the top deck with smoke as a dozen small missiles rocket away, turning into the distance. In the lower decks, gunners crowd around the firing computers.
I wonder if this is like Black Star in modern times coming to assault them to disrupt any more further knowledge they could gain from the Davites, and or I guess maybe prevent the Davites from potentially having an anchor into this world again or something like that. Some part of me also thinks this might be something from the Chaos Insurgency, which it would also be interesting if Black Star in modern times was somehow involved with them, was the leader of them, maybe founded the Chaos Insurgency or something in this canon. But anyway.
Activating the large automated cannons on the top deck, raising their barrels upward and firing another volley of missiles into the distance. With 2 minutes until the object's arrival, a number of explosions are visible in the distant air, and
Yeah.
dots become visible on the horizon, exiting the smoke clouds and rapidly increasing in size and proximity. They are moving extremely quickly, but separate out as they near the ship into at least 30 to 40 different figures.
I mean, it could also be Mechanite stuff. This could be the Church of the Broken God. You know, uh, we were given a description of that female general. I can't remember her name. Bad with names, as you guys know by now. We were given a description at one point in time of her flying extremely fast. So this could be maybe some kind of mechanite assault force that's flying in as well. Maybe in their suits, something like that. You know, I don't know.
A number of them fall into the water, damaged by the missiles, but approximately 2/3 of them continue approaching. The sun is high overhead, but even at a distance, the light gleams off their bronze forms. The automated chain guns begin firing at them indiscriminately, and Foundation personnel begin firing small arms as well. The chain guns fire and reload themselves constantly, switching between targets. The swarm of figures swoops overhead, each one now clearly a highly augmented humanoid with large bronze wings.
Yep.
A
Mechanites.
female, with the largest wingspan on an intricate set of
There we
white
go.
and gold wings, hovers at a distance, then rockets around the ships, far outpacing the guns following her. The rest of the bronze-armored troops charge forward, and Phantom personnel report to Overwatch Command that they're under attack. Overwatch Command copies and has scrambled naval support from the nearby facility, but it may take some time for them to reach the ships. A few static-ridden explosions are heard in the background, and Captain Hickman comes onto the comms, out of breath, informing Command that the attackers are the Mechanites. A number of the Mechanites fly low and grab hold of security personnel, lifting them into the air and
then
dropping them
dropping 'em.
into the sea or
Yep.
onto the metal deck,
Yep.
as chain guns swing around and lay suppressing fire onto the cloud of Mechanites.
Easy way to do
One
it.
of the huge guns swivels on its base, following the largest cluster of Mechanites through the air before firing. The shell collides with one of the armored figures before exploding on impact.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you know, I have no idea what the Mechanites' capabilities really are, but you would think they would be able to like also traverse underwater, right? Just about as easily as they would be able to in the air. So you would think they'd be able to maybe avoid some of these, you know, some of this barrage that's being sent at them by just simply swimming into the water till they get close enough to, um, you know, the platform or whatever for them to get up on top of it. But you would also think that they, knowing, I guess, what modern human capabilities would be, you know, Bamaro, you would think that, you know, with the information that he knew, they would be well aware of what Foundation's capabilities are and what modern weapons capabilities would be, especially after they had a little incursion. And they would have, you would think they would have been easy for them to essentially create countermeasures. You know, any kind of missiles that could fly at them, they could potentially hack their guidance system and throw them off course or destroy them before they could reach them, or even turn them against the Foundation, etc. You know, so. But anyway,
Dispersing the cluster and sending them sailing through the air. As the smoke clears, the figure it impacted sails through the air and slams into the deck of one of the ships. The deck of the ship shakes slightly, the waters around the Phantom growing rough and frothing, and for a moment the Mechanites hang back. With an explosion of spray and foam, 24 large bronze-armored figures rocket out of the water,
There we go.
slamming their swords into the sides of the
there
ship
it is.
and begin to crawl up the hull. Security personnel move to the gunwale, leaning their weapons over the sides and firing straight down.
Okay, so the flyers were kind of a distraction to keep them busy so they wouldn't pay attention to what was going on in the water. until the main assault force was able to get on board. This is some pretty dope imagery. This is some pretty dope imagery. I could see this being a pretty dope Hollywood movie scene or something pretty sick to see in an anime or something like that, you know?
One or two
Or a
Mechanites'
game.
skulls shatter under the hail of gunfire and fall back into the sea, blood spreading into the water. The bullets harmlessly bounce off most of them as they continue to inch their way up the sides of the ship, so the personnel begin to cover one another as they swap out to armor-piercing rounds. At the same time, the aerial Mechanites make another pass over the ships, this time pulling out foulard spears and driving them through the chests of security personnel. Hickman requests air support as several of the flying Mechanites land on the deck and engage personnel in close quarters. The chain guns are directed at them, hammering them with rounds,
Indeed.
which halts their advance but fails to pierce their foulard armor. The boarding
I mean, yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, again, you would think that they would be able to adapt, you know, modern technology and integrate that into the technology that they already had from before, right? I mean, obviously they've got, you know, cold fusion stuff, but like, wouldn't you think they would be able to kind of modify their spears here because they know this is going to be a battle at sea as to kind of some kind of like, I don't know, mini harpoons? They could just throw them at the deck of the ship or even the hull of the ship or whatever. They could have some kind of explosives attached to them or whatever to, you know, uh penetrate the ship's hull and start sinking the ships. I mean, I guess it could also be that that's not their objective. They might be trying to uh, capture people, personnel from the Foundation, and or um, maybe find out what kind of connection they've had to the Davites so far. They might be trying to gather more intel essentially first before they're trying to kill everyone. And it could just be that they're uh, you know, taking out the combatants first before taking hostages and interrogating people. You know what I mean? Still could fight them. Yeah, back in the day, not really. Not any just normal human civilization could have fought them.
party on the Phantom begins to reach the top deck and pull themselves over. They are distinctly humanoid, but tall and heavily augmented with mechanite prosthetics and implants. What little of their skin visible under their armor bulges with subdermal cables and wiring, and they are armed with what appear to be primitive long rifles.
Hmm.
On command, several sections of the deck of the Phantom rise up and out, forming makeshift cover which the security personnel hide behind. The large caliber rounds from the mechanite weapons, however, slam into the barricades at high velocity, a few tearing completely through personnel. Overwatch Command informs the captain that a patrol group of the Indian Navy has been requisitioned and is being sent over, along with some fixed-wing aircraft. They'll amnesticize the personnel afterwards, as under no circumstances can the Mechanites take the ships. The remaining aerial Mechanites land on the decks of the ships, engaging in close-quarters combat. Under heavy machine gun fire, a handful of them drop to the ground, but the foulard armor is proving to be too resistant. The security personnel cry out for reinforcements, and through one of the doors, a group of hooded and armored individuals exit, their shoulder pads emblazoned with the sigil of the Thaumaturgy Division. They proceed to form a small phalanx, with one of them drawing a sigil in the air that expands into a moving, translucent barrier. They press forward onto the deck, the barrier trembling but holding.
We're getting to some Jedi stuff here now.
Under the Mechanites' assault, and the security personnel move to support them. The thaumaturges move forward, coming into within a few meters of the Mechanites, and Dr. Carrick holds the barrier while the others brace themselves against the ground and whisper. A few moments later, green, expanding vines creep out through the cracks in the deck and wrap around the ankles of one of the Mechanites, causing him to crash into the ground. An Alpha 1 operative leans around the cover and empties a magazine into the back of their neck. Dr. Carrick yells out that the process is too energy intensive, and they can only get one at a time, as the phalanx is temporarily pushed back by one of the mechanites charging them. On the other ship, Alpha 1 personnel flood out and lay down suppressing fire from their weaponry, which proved to be slightly more effective, but still failed to stop the advance. Captain Hickman tells all personnel to hold the line, and reinforcements are on their way, but one agent cries out that they're not going to get there in time. Meanwhile, Greaves, Galanis, and the
Greaves, that's the name.
Rajmata hover in the air above the ships, watching over the battle. Dead personnel and mechanites litter the decks, and the gunfire is deafening. From a bird's eye view, it's clear that the mechanite advance is slow but steady, moving inch after inch towards the bridge and the access to the lower decks. Greaves asks what the hell they're looking at, and the Rajmata explains that this is currently occurring in the material plane above
Currently
Mamjul.
occurring.
Galanis realizes that the mechanites must have caught the emergency equipment transfer they did to fix the projection induction, and Greaves orders the Rajmata to let him out right now. The Rajmata, however, says that this is a massacre, as their weaponry and even their primitive understanding of Daevite magic cannot hold a candle to the mechanites in their prime.
This is how she's gonna play her hand. She's gonna bargain with them to send Davite forces out to push back and save them, and in return, have someone take the Dreamer's place or something like that. That's where I feel like this is getting ready to go here. Yep, we're doing it live.
Greaves says that he doesn't care though, and needs to be let out. The Rajmata is confused by this, asking him if he would walk into certain death, and Greaves says that those are his men getting slaughtered out there, and they'll find a way to turn the tide. Even if they can't, the least he can do is die alongside them. Galanis says that she cannot keep them here, and the Rajmata agrees, saying that she is not keeping Greaves here. His mind is. They have been meeting for a year, and not once in that time has she ever shown the power to trap him into the projection. Only his mind can do such a thing, as his current state is caused entirely by the object in his brain. Galanis asks how she can possibly know that, but Greaves just asks if he's dead. The Rajmata says that he isn't, but both of them are in a torpor, from which they are unlikely to awaken, and
Gotcha.
certainly not before the mechanites kill his men, make it to the lower deck, and slit his throat, along with those of everyone else on board.
So essentially, yeah, he's stuck in that comatose state where he's going to be separated from his body, and he's alive. He's basically in kind of like almost like a purgatory state. Like, body's alive, but his spirit is separated from the body, and he's unable to return back to his body into the real world. So he's kind of stuck there.
She knows this because the Scarlet whispered it to the Maharaja, and him to her. Their future is written in the trees. Galanis says that that can't be right, and there has to be something they can do, as the firefight continues to rage down below. The Rajmata says that there is, as she has told them of how Korar is collapsing, and how the strain has sucked out the last vestiges of the Maharaja's energy, sapped into nothing after almost 1,000 years. The idea of the Eternal City is a lie, as the astral projection was never meant to be an afterlife. It was only a matter of time, and the Foundation has accelerated that. The Maharaja is dead. Korar is dying. But if the Scarlet could select a new host, not only would the Deva survive, but much like the Black Star when he had his god's favor, turning the tide of this battle would be trivial.
So yeah. Again, she's playing her hand here, trying to get someone selected. It's interesting, though, that she's admitted right there that, the dream is a lie. It's not meant to be an afterlife. but that's like what their whole like literal religion was based off of. They told all their human slaves and subjects that, hey man, yeah, you're a slave right now, dude, but hey man, you give your life for the cause, you're gonna be reincarnated in the astral plane as a Davite, and then you could be reborn into the physical realm as a Davite and be something better. So it's interesting to me then that she admitted that that right there is a lie. And so then the humans have literally just been essentially ammunition for their spells, tools for them to use, And so what makes them think that it would be any different were they to re-release them in modern time? But of course, the fact that the Meccans are here, it's going to force their hand. So it's going to end up playing out that they're going to ask the Davites for help. I mean, she was just saying right there, though, right? That, like, it's a lie. Let's rewind this. Let's listen to this.
Of the Maharaja. The Rajmata says that there is, as she has told them of how Korar is collapsing, and how the strain has sucked out the last vestiges of the Maharaja's energy, sapped into nothing after almost 1,000 years. The idea of the Eternal City is a lie, as the astral projection was never meant to be an afterlife.
See? The idea of the astral projection was never meant to be an afterlife. All of that's a lie. So I don't think that their system, the way they've told it, was happening the way that they were telling people it was happening. Maybe it was. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's not the case. Because we've only seen, from what I remember of the story so far, we've only seen Davites here, right? There's not been any kind of other humans whatsoever. So, I mean, I don't know, right? Like, and they still are of like a slave system, caste system. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe the fact that there's no humans there could just be that, yeah, they were incarnated as Davites, right? The thing actually happened. But I don't know. The way I'm interpreting it is that this afterlife that they were telling people is a lie, but I could be wrong. And I feel like it's just a situation where humans are just been ammunition for their spells, tools to be used and disposed of, etc.
It was only a matter of time, and the Foundation has accelerated that. The Maharaja is dead. Korar is dying. But if the Scarlet could select a new host, not only would the Deva survive, but much like the Black Star when he had his god's favor, turning the tide of this battle would be trivial. Galanis remarks that the Rajmata said that if a human tried to commune with the Scarlet, they'd be destroyed, but the Rajmata says that most would. She's been watching Greaves, however, and the Scarlet has told her that their people, the Foundation, are sliding towards a war none of them can prevent. He is a soldier, a warrior king, and he wishes to protect his people. She bids him to strike a new covenant, become their Maharaja, their king,
I saw this coming,
and destroy his enemies. Galanis begins to say how completely insane that is, but Greaves immediately agrees.
Yep.
Galanis asks him if he's out of his mind, but he replies that he said he'd do anything. Galanis says that they'll find another way, as they can't let the Deva return to power just to win one battle. But
I mean, from his point of view, right, his men are dying. He can't return because he's separated from his body. This may be the only way for him to actually have the power and have an avenue of being able to return to the physical realm in some form or another. They don't really have the time. He's making the choice as a soldier. This is how it is.
But Greaves says that the Rajmata isn't just talking about this. There's a storm coming, something bigger than the Mechanites, bigger than any of them, and the Foundation needs to survive. The vision begins to crackle and sag like film put to a match, and the Rajmata says that they are out of time. She claps her hand, and the vision melts away. The group is now standing in the antechamber of the Citadel, not in Korar, but the ruined throne room in Mamjul. The Rajmata claps her hands again, and the wooden floor splits apart, curling back to reveal a hollow space. Inside lies the desiccated, mummified corpse of a man, skin stretched taut, a black headdress resting on his brow. A single red jewel is embedded into the headdress, shining like an ocean of blood. The Rajmata bids Greaves to take the jewel, just as the Maharaja took it from the roots of the trees so many centuries ago. Galanis begs him not to do it, as he doesn't know what he's unleashing, but Greaves reaches in and firmly pulls on the jewel. It resists at first, but then gives way, tearing out of the Maharaja's headdress and leaving behind a gaping hole. As he watches, the Maharaja's body falls in on itself.
I can't help but think about, this is an old school kind of reference, but if you played first Diablo, spoilers. If you haven't played the first Diablo, spoilers, but if you have, the ending of that, he takes the soul stone with Diablo's soul, whoever your character is, right? Your character takes the soul stone with Diablo's soul and shoves it into his forehead and becomes the vessel for Diablo. Very much giving me that kind of vibes. That's where my brain's going. That's what I'm seeing in my head right now. Getting ready to shove this jewel in his brain and become the vessel for the Scarlet.
Drying even further and turning into dust. The stone whispers to him promises of salvation, of divination, of victory against the enemy. The Rajmata tells Greaves to place the stone where it belongs, and he steps over to the far wall, which contains the engraving of the Tree of Life, of the Deva and the humans dancing around it, and the Scarlet watching over them. Greaves, as if in a trance, raises the stone, and the wall falls away, peeling back and receding, splintering into nothing, and revealing an infinite scarlet ocean behind it. It's a miasma of shifting and spiraling redness, stretching far into a horizon that cannot possibly exist. It speaks with the voice of 100,000 souls sacrificed in its name, as a great and terrible idea, as a god. It asks Greaves what he is willing to sacrifice. And after a brief pause, he simply responds with, everything.
Yeah.
The Scarlet doesn't respond, as it doesn't need to, and instead it beckons forth. Greaves steps forward, across the threshold, into everything. It is around him, in him, the primal knowledge of what was before and what will be.
Yep.
The natural law written millions of years before any life existed. It is infinitely complex and at once deeply simple. He sees everything, the precipice they're on and the brink they are falling towards. Their universe, severed from the others, utterly alone. He
That's
sees
interesting.
Aram in his throne room in Amani Ram, augmented beyond any specter of humanity. His eyes glitter with foresight and fear as he sees what Greaves does, and he is terrified of it. Greaves sees the Black Star sitting alone in a forgotten city on a forgotten island. A paper lies in front of him, and the weight of eras rests on his face. The power of something older than the universe itself courses through Greaves, and he reaches out and touches God. We're then given the last few verses of the Song of the Deva, which read, as witnessed by Vaslara Siraj Sharat, 7th Rajmata of the Scarlet Maharaja. And after the waves crested over the spires and palaces of Mamjul, and brought the city low, and slew in one fell wave the Covenant, then for a time Mamjul rested, alone and rent at the bottom of the sea. And there it lay as the Black Star marched onwards through the center of Asia against the forces of the Nalka, and took the world into a great silence. And there it continued to lie, unaware of the events beyond the waters, until the ruins of the once great were happened upon by an old enemy, one who had forgotten its own past. And such were the Deva immortalized in the pages of the document, defiant of their prison of non-existence. And in this way, the song of the Deva began to right itself once more. Back on the ships, Overwatch Command informs Hickman that Satellite 15 of the Atreus array is approaching their location, with an ETA of 6 minutes, but they're not sure if they have that much time. A large amount of the security personnel have been killed, and their corpses litter the deck. The Mechanites are nearly at the bridge, only held back by the few remaining personnel and Alpha 1 operatives who huddle behind the barricades. The deck of the ship then rumbles again, but this time the force is coming from below. Hickman informs Overwatch Command that their subaquatic monitoring equipment is giving some abnormal readings, but they're cut off as the ship shudders and the Mechanites pause their advance. In the center of the three ships, a circle of red light begins to form in the water, 10 meters across. It steadily increases in brightness and intensity until a single figure, wreathed in fire, breaks through the surface of the sea, immediately boiling the water around it to vapor that sprays outward. It rises into the air, a blur of red shooting up to twice the height of the Phantom and moving until it is hovering over the deck. Hickman tells Overwatch Command that there's a red-skinned, nude figure flying above the ship, and it doesn't appear to be Mechanite. It's glowing a corona of red light, and the Mechanites have just stopped and are staring at it. The figure then reaches one hand out and waves it across the dozens of Mechanites on the deck of the Phantom. The vines, left abandoned by the Thaumaturgy Division, suddenly engorge with thorns and violently outstretch, far more aggressive than they were before. They wrap around the torsos of the Mechanites, pulling them to the ground, and burrow through their eye sockets and mouths, tearing them apart from the inside, and leaving pools of viscera and blood-soaked augments.
A hell of a way to die.
The remaining Mechanites turn their weapons on the floating figure, barraging it with spears, rifles, and conventional firearms. Several of the flying units take to the air to flee, but the figure lazily waves another hand and they stop in midair, clutching at their implants. The bare skin where their augments are attached turns yellow, then green, then black, rotting in real time. It oozes with pus and disintegrates, the dead tissue tearing away from the living, their implants going with it, and their limbless torsos fall screaming into the sea. The figure then turns its attention to the handful of remaining hostiles, who are preparing a retreat, about to leap over the edge of the ship and back into the sea. Some even make it, but they do not survive the fall, as their bodies split apart, and vines and roots formed inside of them tear through their skin and flesh as they force an exit.
Jesus.
Many are simply bisected, their bloody halves falling into the sea and sinking, turning the water red with blood as it pools around the ships. In the course of 40 seconds, the figure eviscerated over 100 Mechanites. Hickman tells Overwatch Command that the figure massacred all of the Mechanites, with no further friendly casualties. Command tells Hickman to treat the figure as hostile. The figure then begins to descend from its hovering position, and it becomes clear that it is essentially a disembodied nervous system wrapped in a translucent red layer. As it descends, it begins to take firm shape, as bones grow and muscles knit themselves into place, although the figure never grows skin. It
Interesting.
stands well over 3 meters tall, with large horns on its head, and the surface of its body is inscribed with symbols and markings that pulse to an inaudible rhythm. As it reaches the deck of the Phantom, Alpha 1 operatives fan out from behind cover, supported by security personnel. They surround the figure in a circle, guns drawn and pointed at its head, although it does not react. The operatives then pause.
I mean, you literally just watched it in the matter of, like you said, 40 seconds, annihilate more than 100 mechanites who were pushing you guys back with your modern weaponry and capabilities. What do you think you're gonna do against this, dude? You know what I'm saying? Like, would be better served to not try to present yourself as a hostile force trying to impose your will on this being that just saved your lives. Just saying.
As the figure looks up and raises a hand in greeting, and the team recognizes the figure as Lieutenant Greaves. In the aftermath, the figure, now temporarily designated as SCP-001-King, surrendered to security forces and was detained in a secure holding cell aboard the Phantom. Interrogations, however, were a failure, as it insisted on speaking first to Galanis. Galanis was brought into the secure cell 4 hours after they awakened from the astral projection and were debriefed. Galanis enters the cell, and there are a number of automated turrets encircling the ceiling, all aiming at Greaves, with a thick pane of glass separating the observation chamber from the entity. Galanis calls out to him as Lucian, and he says that perhaps he once was, but now he is so much more. He made the decision that Galanis could not, of apotheosis and escalation to a higher truth. Galanis says that he can't be Greaves, as his body is still lying in the psychotronics lab, but he says that that's just the material body, while he is the immaterial body, the soul. He has...
I mean, you be able to still kill his physical body and then kill him then? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that his weakness at this point? Because, like, even though he's been upgraded, right? It's still just kind of like his spirit. Like, he's still just an astral creature, you know? So, like, could you just go over there and put a bullet in his physical body and would it end him? Or is he able to, now that he is this spirit god form, you know, would he be able to prevent anything from happening to his physical body? You know, who knows?
has reached out and become one with something so much greater than he or Galanis. Galanis replies that he became the Scarlet Maharaja, and asks how could he be so stupid. Greaves says that he did what he had to do, and now he sees the whole board laid out in front of him. The total mass of their history, beginning to end.
I mean, like, again, if you have the opportunity to become a god, it's kind of hard to turn it down, right? Like, I mean, I guess it would really depend on, like, what the downsides would be. But I don't know, man. It would be pretty hard to pass up.
Galanis counters that he was the one that was supposed to make sure this didn't happen, but Greaves says that the situation changed. He's a soldier, and when you see armies trampled, entire cities rent to ash, and nations burned, you have to do something.
Yeah, and I mean, the Meccans kind of forced his
made
hand
the
too,
wrong
right?
decision for the right reasons.
Like, if the Meccans weren't there assaulting them, this wouldn't have happened, you know? So, like, they honestly are as much to blame as anything. If they weren't there, he never would have been forced into this situation. And the Davites probably would have just died off, right? The Astral City probably would have just faded away. And maybe Greaves would have died at some point. Maybe they would have been able to figure out a way to get him back in his body. Maybe not. Probably not. And then that would have probably have just been like the end of it. But the Meccans came and assaulted them at that particular time, and so they kind of forced his hand.
As only a madman would see what is coming and elect to do nothing. Galanis says that they should have never interfered with the Deva to begin with, and Greaves replies that they shouldn't have,
Yep.
but they did, and he's
Yep.
the result of the new covenant.
Yep.
The Deva realize that they are limited by their current means of existence.
I mean, see, like, basically what I said at the beginning of this whole thing, right? Like, you're playing with things that you don't necessarily understand. You went through the process of activating the entire city of Amon Aram without really understanding it. And then, of course, Morrow was able to take it over after the consciousness from the previous emperor was essentially downloaded into him. So now you have the Meccans back in modern time. And of course, any kind of interaction with the Davites, yeah, you might have learned some information, but you got to know that that's what they're going to want too. And, any kind of informational exchange is more than likely going to lead to that end goal of them wanting to come back to the physical realm in some way, shape, or form, or at the very least, trying to make a pact with humanity again for some kind of symbiotic relationship.
That they can only interact with the world through the Foundation. He is now the vessel, and their power flows from the Scarlet to them, to him, to the Foundation. Galanis asks about him, as they thought the Maharaja needed to be dreaming to ensure that Korar survives, and Greaves says that he does. Soon he will leave, to fall into the endless sleep demanded of him, so that their allies may continue to exist and support them in the coming storm. Before that, however, arrangements must be made. Galanis asks what storm, and Greaves says that he sees past, present, and future, but that comes with a responsibility of care. The Council will understand what he means. He would say more, but he is bound by the same magic that bound the Rajmata to silence. Galanis remarks that it's enough magic to bind a god, but Greaves says that he is just a prophet. The Scarlet is free to tell him the truth, and it has, but he simply cannot share it with them, so Galanis must discover it themselves.
The Scarlet seems kind of more like a concept in this canon, like the conceptualization of a god than an actual god, like the idea of their god, which is kind of what he said when Greaves was stepping in,
Galanis then asks about the arrangements that need to be made, and Greaves says that the Deva require certain concessions for their support.
Of course.
For teaching the Foundation thaumaturges
They're
their
gonna
magic.
need humans.
Chief among them is being immortalized in the Foundation archives, something that will last beyond the Song of the Deva, even as a new verse is written. Galanis is shocked at the idea of allying with the Devites, but Greaves says that we do what we must to survive, and the deck of the Phantom is littered with the bodies of those who didn't. The Mechanites are too dangerous for the Foundation alone, and they are nothing compared to what rests on the horizon. Galanis refuses, saying that they'll find another way, one that doesn't betray the Foundation's principles. but Greaves just says that that decision is the Council's to make,
Yeah.
and notes that they have already been trading information, support, and assistance. Galanis says that they can't take this to the Council, as they were insistent that this wouldn't end up like a money ROM, but here they are. Greaves responds by telling Galanis to rid themselves of these petty insecurities, as they can become something greater than a cog in the machine.
I mean, I feel like the O5 Council probably knew where this was going, and they simply wanted to have, as they said, a deterrent for the Mechanites. And that's what they've got now. They now have a force allied and working with them that is able to deter any kind of aggression against the Foundation from the Mechanites.
Galanis can shape their future, and he needs someone he can trust, a new Rajmata. Galanis would answer to no one but themselves, and his will would be their will. This would be a chance to mold the society how they wish, with no judgment, no commitments to modern biases and bigotries. A perfect society, beyond gender and scarcity and suffering. Galanis vehemently refuses, and says that this isn't what they wanted at all, and this isn't how any of this was supposed to go. After a pause, Greaves says that that's disappointing, as Galanis might have been legendary. He tells them to go now, and take the terms of his covenant to the Council, and see if they accept the help he wants to give them, as they understand the threat. Galanis asks him how they got here, and Greaves replies that Galanis led them here,
I mean, yeah,
letting themselves be pushed and pulled
exactly.
by the forces that surround them. Galanis was a vessel with no agency of their
Like, Galanis was the one the whole time that was like pushing to find more information, wanting to find something to counteract, what was going on in the Monoram and to kind of prove their worth. Wanting to essentially prove that they could do what, happened with Nussbaum and the other guy that became Amaro. I can't remember his name. But without the negative side effects, proving that they could be greater, that they could find the information of this ancient civilization and find some kind of use for it to be a deterrent against the Mechanites, but without awaking Amon Ram. But, that wasn't going to happen. And she should have realized that, honestly, first time she met, the Davite Empress, whatever, the whatever the terminology for her is, the Majrama or whatever. Again, I can't remember these names and terms. Um, but I mean, yeah, like she could have at any point in time literally just cut off all ties. Said that the information that we're getting from what I've learned, the Davites are too great of a risk. Their civilization and what they did to humans, even though they had a civilization that was rich with culture and art and music and things like that. They also were a culture of slavery and brutal sacrifices and um, brutal implementation of their caste system and massacring people they saw less than without a second thought and essentially using humans as fodder in wars, ammunition in wars, tools to be used however they wanted to, with, you know, the promise, whether it was real or not, of, if you believe in our cause and sacrifice yourselves, you'll be reborn in the afterlife as a Davite. Whether it was real or not, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's pretty foolish to not expect to open this Pandora's box without, consequences, essentially,
Their own, used and thrown away. Galanis counters that he called them a leader, and Greaves says that they would rise to the occasion, but they haven't.
I also feel like at this point, like if I was Galanis at this point, right, I feel like I would just go ahead and take the steps forward and become the next Davite Empress, whatever, because that's what Greaves is offering her right now. Greaves is saying, he's gonna become the sleeper, the one that's gonna be he's gonna become the dreamer that keeps Korar alive, and he's offering her the position to run the Davite society, essentially. And he literally says that you'll be able to run it however you want to and recreate the society in whatever image you want to. And so it's like, I feel like at this point, you've gone this far, you might as well take those next steps, and at least then you could reform the society how you wanted to, possibly find ways of redoing the caste system, and maybe abolishing the slavery, and finding other ways of maybe using your spellcraft, or at least using, like, it's one thing to have people sign up to be soldiers and willingly sacrifice themselves, for the greater good of their society, right? So like that's one thing, but just rounding up people and, you know, saying, just rounding up people as slaves and using them as fodder, ammunition, etc., as we already said, is completely different. So like you could at least take the reins, change things, get rid of this, caste system, get rid of this slavery system, implement a new system that could still work, with the confines of their thaumaturgy and their biomancy, while aligning with the foundation, and, combining your thaumaturgy with the foundation technology, and, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it feels like at this point you might as well take that step forward and at least be in control of where things go to an extent, right? So, but I don't know. It could be that she's still under that want of trying to. I feel like she's trying to prove that she's better than Nussbaum and, Bumaro, uh, by like saying that, I found all this and I didn't succumb to the temptations that they did, kind of a situation. And I feel like, you know, that's what's keeping her from making this decision. And I don't know. I feel like it's a bad one. You know what I'm saying?
Galanis needs to take charge before it's too late, and then Greaves bids them farewell before
And I mean, I could be completely wrong, right? Like, it could be a situation where, would she had taken that, offer, she could end up just becoming a slave in herself up to that system, even though she's in charge. That system's already there, and maybe it wouldn't be able to be changed because it is so ingrained in their beliefs, in their theology, that it couldn't be changed. So she would just become another cog in that system. But who knows?
manifesting in a flash of fire and red light, leaving behind nothing but a few dead leaves. And then Greaves bids them farewell before demanifesting in a flash of fire and red light, leaving behind nothing but a few dead leaves. Galanis stands, staring at the leaves for a few moments before turning and leaving. 3 days later, on June 3rd, the O5s released a new edict, although Galanis was not invited to the deliberation session or to testify.
Yikes.
The council approved 7-5 to establish formal diplomatic channels with the Davic Empire.
I mean, the cat's out of the bag now, right?
The role of the human element in a future Davic covenant when it is established.
I mean, they got D classes to spare, right? You know?
The specifics of the covenant will be worked out in a manner to benefit both parties and ensure mutual security. The Mamjul Korar initiative's role is to be transformed into a diplomatic one, with academic study of the Deva allowing a better understanding of their culture and society as they pertain to the Foundation. SCP-001 King, formerly
Yeah.
Lieutenant Greaves, the current Scarlet Maharaja of the Davic Empire, is to serve as a channel for the thaumaturgic powers of the Deva, allowing them to be utilized by trained Foundation thaumaturges. The Davic Empire is to support the Foundation in any future confrontations against hostile anomalous empires.
I mean,
The
there you
edict
go.
also notes that the vote was taken and
They've got a whole new Davite MTF task force now. You know what I'm saying, dude? Right? Like, they definitely got some upgrades, but you know, I guess at what cost? You know?
this measure is enacted in the absence of the administrator, who historically has handled diplomatic commitments of the Foundation. Afterwards, Desai and Galanis sit and discuss how insane of a decision this was on the O5's part. Galanis remarks on how they can't understand what the Council could possibly be thinking, and Desai says that they want to ally with the baby-sacrificing demons. Galanis says that this was
I mean, I feel like they would have much rather had, you know, been allies with the Mechanites, but that seems like that door's closed. And I doubt that the Sarkics, Nulkins, you know, in this canon so far, I doubt that they're going to be the type that is going to want to work together with the Foundation in any way, shape, or form. So I guess you got to make a deal with the devil, you know?
was a mistake from top to bottom, and that they had an academic responsibility, but they were stupid and naive. There was no way this was going to go any other way than the Foundation
Yep.
weaponizing the Deva for their purposes, just like Amani Ram. Galanis failed then, and failed now. Desai tries to say that it isn't their fault, but Galanis replies that they need to take agency, although they don't know how yet. They're trapped between a rock and a hard place, as the Council is expecting Galanis to enforce this, to continue leading the initiative into something they can't possibly support, and did it all without so much as asking Galanis. Desai says that Galanis is still the project lead, and can demand an audience with the Council, to demand an answer. Galanis was the one who saw the Rajmata's visions, not the Council, so they don't know what they're agreeing to. Speaking of the Rajmata, Desai has no love for her, saying that the Foundation protects their people every day, and does it without sacrificing their baser principles. Galanis replies that it's more than that, as there are two groups here, one that thinks the Deva are all insane murderers, and the other one that thinks that's a risk they have to take. Galanis doesn't take either side though, again saying that they are caught between a rock and a hard place. Galanis has seen the visions, and knows that the Deva are not morally pure. Letting a culture with the morals of 3,000 years ago out into the modern world is obscenely careless.
I mean, you already did it with the Mechans, right? Like, I mean, the Mechans, you know, had a moral code from 3,000 years ago. It's just their moral code was based on the worship of technology, essentially. And they honestly were a much more militaristic society than the Davites were. The Davites really were more kind of about cultural advancement, at least from what we've learned from the Davites' point of view. And they were kind of forced into having to fight by, you know, the Mechans. Although the Scarlet was also warning them about the Abominate and kind of preparing them for that as well. So
But at the same time, they're not inherently evil, and they don't deserve to be destroyed. The way that Greaves was talking scared them, though, and Galanus doesn't know why. Not just him either, as the Rajmata and even 051 all seem utterly convinced that humanity is about to crash into something, and Galanus doesn't know what it is. Desai just says that they'll get through it, because they're the Foundation, and they always do. They sit in silence for some time, sorting through a huge stack of debriefing documents, until Desai grabs a black envelope from the stack. Galanus takes it and realizes that it's from Greaves, and they forgot about this. Galanus had asked Greaves to run a query on a term that kept coming up in their research, since he had a higher clearance level. Galanus opens the envelope and reads the document, sitting in silence for nearly a minute afterwards. Galanus then swears, abruptly stands up, and says that they're going to do something they should have done a long time ago. Afterwards, Galanus uses the lay space communicator to speak with the O5 Council, immediately asking them what the hell they've done.
you know, is where's Greaves' body? Is it still there? Like, is his physical body still there? Again, right? Like they said that his new Scarlet form was just kind of like an astral spirit body, wasn't actually physical. So, like, is he still connected to his physical body? Like, and where is it? They haven't said it disappeared, right? It could still be on the ship, right? Unless when he teleported away, he took his body with him. And I just didn't really kind of, I guess, put two and two together at that point in time. But the way it was worded, it didn't really make it sound like that was the case.
They talked so much about not wanting to end up like a money ROM, and yet here they make that edict. 055, however, counters that this is a success for them, as they now have access to a school of thaumaturgy that's an effective.
I mean, yeah, that very well could be, right? It could be that case that, like, once you connect with the jewel and make that pact, right, like your body becomes like a husk and your spirit kind of becomes the new vessel or whatever, I don't know.
Countermeasure to mechanite augments. They have a better understanding of the nature of these gods and the threat they pose, and now the Deva are indebted to them. Galanus asks what they mean by indebted, and the room goes silent until 051 says that the details are still being worked out,
Yikes.
but they're strongly considering Greaves' offer for a new covenant. Galanus says that they had a feeling, and they've spent more than a year studying them. The Deva aren't evil, but this is not going to go how the Council thinks it will.
I mean, yeah, right? Like, again, you're talking about a civilization, an advanced civilization that is thousands of years old. It's advanced in different ways, right? They're thaumaturgically far more advanced and capable than the Foundation and any other faction, as far as we know in this canon, are right now, right? You got to know that the Davites aren't gonna give them all of their secrets. They're gonna keep some things to themselves because, I mean, like, that's just smart, right? You're not gonna sit there and give away all your secrets, even to an ally, because then what happens if that ally eventually becomes your enemy and you got no trump card? You got, no ace up your sleeve, nothing to play. So it's not like it would be a situation, in my opinion, where the Davites would, like, allow the Foundation to think they're in charge, and the Davites probably would, cooperate for a certain time until certain events might happen, and then once they're in a position of enough power where they've established a new city, society, they have enough uh, strong enough connection in the physical realm that they wouldn't necessarily need the foundation anymore, you know, they would probably cut ties with them.
051 says that he's afraid that that's a risk they're willing to take, and asks Galanis to just calm down.
Yeah, just
Galanis,
calm
however,
down.
says that that doesn't explain why they'd be indebted to the Foundation, as the Covenant is a mutual agreement. It benefits the Deva as much as it benefits the Foundation, so what
True.
are they getting extra?
Supposed to be symbiotic.
What do the Deva even want, as they've been written out of history, out of reality itself? They don't
So I think this is going to lead into the SCP creation of that book. So there will always be there. They can't be written out of history.
exist in any material sense anymore, and they didn't until the Foundation started looking at them. Once they stop looking, the Deva will fade away again. They want something permanent, and they want someone to write them back into history. Galanis then suddenly comes to a realization, and says that they're making a deal with the devil. 051 assures them that he is acutely aware of the risks they're taking. Galanis says that he's been aware of them for 60 years, although 051 replies that he's not sure what they're referring to. Galanis says that Greaves used his credentials to run a database query for Black Star to see what Galanis was locked out of. He found a database of verbal cognitohazards dating back to the original Memetics Division during World War II. The first record was for Black Star. 051 has known about it since then, and Galanis has no idea what he knows or how, but he's known something about all of this since 1945 that he never told Galanis or Greaves or anyone.
That would be an interesting tie-in if let's say Hitler, the Nazis, etc. somehow were looking for Black Star, right? Because it was very much known that the Nazis, kind of going towards the end of the war, were getting desperate and looking for any kind of means of power. We're actually looking for any kind of occult means and stuff like that that could benefit them. So it would be an interesting tale if they came upon Black Star and actually released them, but it was too late for them to use Black Star or whatever. You know what I'm saying? That'd be an interesting little kind of side story. Because from what I understand, again, one of the occult wars, World War II, was one of the occult wars, whichever one it was. I think someone had commented in a video before that was like eighth occult war or something like that, but I don't know.
051, however, says that he swears he has no idea what Galanis is talking about, and only someone with level 5 clearance could have ordered those files sealed.
Clarence.
056 chimes in that they're not the only ones with level 5 clearance, meaning the administrator, and the room bursts into chatter about how they haven't seen him in years, and they wonder why he would even hide this from them. 051 calms the room down, and assures Galanis that they'll look into this, but in isolation it really doesn't mean anything. There are 1,000 ways they could have randomly stumbled across something like that. Galanis says that 051 stood there in a money ROM and assured them that he was a historian, and that he wouldn't let this be exploited. 051 replies that he has people to protect, as another occult war is brewing on the horizon, and he's just doing what they can to avert it. Galanis is confused, and 051 asks them what the occult wars are. Galanis replies that they are secret wars of the anomalous world, occurring in parallel with mundane conflicts, but the last occult war was nearly 100 years ago. 051 says that that means the next one has had 100 years to stew, or longer, and this time the threat won't be Nazis with anomalous weapons. It will be something so powerful, the only term they have for it is Reality Bender, the Black Star. He says that they all have their roles to play, and Galanis's is to follow the orders he gives. Galanis asks if they're going to stay on as project lead and execute this new directive, which 051 confirms. Galanis then immediately resigns from the Foundation,
There you go.
saying that they're not going to be complicit in them weaponizing the anomalous. After the Manhattan Project, a number of scientists at Los Alamos couldn't handle the reality of what they've done and helped to create, and they couldn't live like that. 051 says that, yes, he knows, as he was there. Galanis continues, saying that for all of
Is 051 Oppenheimer? Is that who this is? The Destroyer of Worlds?
his talk of making sure that Galanis didn't end up like Aram, he let Greaves turn into that thing the moment it was useful to them. They should have never gotten involved in this, and now they're cutting themselves off. 051 just says that that's disappointing, and Galanis replies that he wants to as well, because he's a historian, so he understands where this road ends. 051, however, just says that he has obligations and a higher calling, as his principles can't be unimpeachable because then people die. Galanis says that that mentality is used to justify every Faustian bargain in history, but 051 just shrugs and says that they're all slaves to something, echoing the Rajmata's words. Afterwards, the Davik Empire is designated as Group of Interest 019 and classified as an ally of the Foundation. Additionally, the Foundation and the Davik Empire have entered into a formal covenant, a mutually beneficial anomalous agreement binding both sides to each other. This covenant is contingent on several factors, and may be broken off if either party feels it has been wronged or betrayed. The Davik Empire will surrender knowledge on thaumaturgy that is capable of being utilized against hostile threats. The Davik Empire will remain in the astral plane and make no attempts to forcibly breach through to the material plane.
Interesting.
And they will not intentionally expose their existence, the Foundation's, or the anomalous to non-Veil societies. In return, the Foundation will act as the human arm of the Covenant, affecting the material plane in the stead of the Davik Empire, and a small number of personnel will be permitted to become temporary hosts of Deva, thereby significantly escalating their thaumaturgy ability. Additionally, as the Davik Empire has been ontologically scrubbed from baseline reality by the Black Star, the Foundation will take a leading role in restoring them. While they will not be given physical form, interviews with Deva and the Rajmata indicate that the presence of a physical, written record of the Deva's history will significantly stabilize Korar and begin restoring the vast historical records in Mamjul and across the Indian subcontinent that were obliterated. As their presence in baseline reality retroactively increases, so will the thaumaturgic power they can supply to the Foundation.
The Davites are playing the long game here, right? They're agreeing to stay in the astral city, right? In return for giving the Foundation information and thaumaturgic abilities to help combat their enemies with probably what will end up being a thaumaturgical task force or just an upgrade to their current thaumaturgical task force with Davite augmentation, I guess you could say. In return for the written record, which I believe is going to end up being that SCP book about the Davite history that keeps rewriting itself, so the Davites will always exist. Which is also interesting, right? Because then that ties into, again, knowledge of something, belief in something keeps it alive. And as she said, that will help anchor them further. But to me, it's, like I said, it's also them playing the long game, right? Like, they're playing by the Foundation's rules for the time being, but the Foundation could eventually cease to exist, be wiped out, or whatever. And like, if you think about it, right? Like, if this book is what I think it's going to be, that SCP, record of them, it can't be destroyed. So it'll always exist. So as long as someone somewhere finds it, the Davites will always be able to come back to existence in some way, shape, or form, right? So they could just hang out in the astral world, the Black Star, whoever, come through, wipe out everything. Some random person could find the book and reignite the Davite culture in the physical realm, and then give Davites access to the physical realm, later on in the future, that could benefit so they're essentially just planting seeds of, ways for them to always exist and always have a way of coming back in the physical realm. uh you know and that also could be, a situation where at some point in time things get bad enough to where Foundation needs them to come back in the physical realm or to help them out, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like this is just the Davites playing the long game, and obviously they've been in this astral city for thousands of years, and time works differently there. So who knows, man? Moments there could be years here or vice versa. So, but they've obviously learned patience where they're at, and yeah, it seems like they're playing the long game till they can uh break away from the Foundation, and or just get an advantage over them, or until maybe the Foundation gets wiped out. You know what I'm saying, right? But they're essentially just making redundancies, so they're always going to exist and have ways of returning to the physical realm at some point in time.
And this effect will apply retroactively, so as the document is extended and completed, more ancient artifacts and ruins of the Deva will be unearthed. This anomalous effect has been classified as SCP-140 and has been applied to the current most complete record of the history of the Deva, which is this document. Under Containment Protocol Herodotus, this document has been separated into 5 acts, each covering, in a parallel, a broad period of the Deva's history from the Song of the Deva, and the events leading to their rediscovery. As such, this file has been designated the primary vector of SCP-140, and it's recommended for perusal in its redacted forms by all cleared Foundation personnel, because as more personnel go through this document, the more the Foundation's thaumaturgic capacity increases. As the Mamjul Korar initiative shifts into its new goals of training thaumaturges in Deva magic, global Foundation priorities are to be shifted towards the investigation and approval of thaumial class anomalies, particularly those effective in combat applications. Project Olympia, therefore, has been expedited. Global threat level has once again been elevated to Kennec 5, and Project Forerunner Triad is to dedicate all possible resources to identifying, locating, and securing the final remaining city.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, we're getting foreshadowing here of things to come, things escalating. They're obviously going to start looking for the final city with the Sarkics, etc. So I would assume that means, as we get into that, Black Star, the Abominant, might also come more into play, but clearly the Sarkics are gonna, be the next faction to be revised, etc.
The Nalka city of Black Adatum. Following the ratification of the Foundation Deva Treaty and Galanis' immediate resignation, a helicopter was dispatched to extract Galanis for processing and amnesticization, with Dr. Carl Aberer serving as the interim project lead. Before they were extracted, Galanis was observed to enter the psychotronics lab for a period of 45 minutes. The event was only noticed by security staff after Galanis had been escorted by Alpha 1 operatives into the helicopter and
So she went back to the astral plane, huh?
departed. The recording device associated with Greaves' LSAP array was still active, and were given a transcript of Galanis' last astral projection. Galanis is in the throne room of the Citadel, and once again the city is in an orgiastic sway, with drum beats ringing throughout, now with new joyous words. A new verse of the Song of the Deva is being written, and the Rajmata is seated on the throne, draped in luxurious shawls and silks. She greets Galanis, but Galanis says to spare the pleasantries, as they've resigned and she won't be seen any more of them. The Rajmata says that is truly a shame, as for all their faults, Galanis was a remarkably innocent soul. It's unfortunate that wars are not kind to the innocent.
Yep.
Galanis would also say so, seeing what it did to her children. The Rajmata's expression does not shift at this, and she asks what Galanis has come for. Galanis wants an answer, to which the Rajmata asks if it's just one, as she's sure they have many questions. Galanis, however, says that honestly, no, not really, as everything they've wondered about has been just about cleared up, no thanks to the Rajmata. The Rajmata says that she's not going to apologize for doing what she did to ensure the survival of her people, as Galanis' people would have done the same.
Yep.
Galanis replies that they did, and the Rajmata agrees, saying that Galanis can't fault her for this, as the beauty of the covenant is that it is made with the consent of all parties. She did not force Greaves or the overseers into anything they didn't want to do. They simply saw the truth, that the only way they're going to weather the coming storm is together. Her entire nation drowned after falling under the sea, and standing from where she is, she can once again see the tides are rising. Galanis says that it's a new occult war, but the Rajmata counters by saying that it's the same occult war, the first war that never ended.
Exactly.
It merely
it's a continuation of that first war. All the original factions are coming back and are going to take their place on the board again, and what started in the past is going to repeat itself, or continue, I should say.
They had a 3,000-year-old ceasefire that expired the moment the Foundation unleashed a Mani Ram from its sandy tomb. Galanis says that all of them are so sure that the Black Star and his god are still out there, biding their time, and wants to know why. The Rajmata explains that she knows this because her master whispered it through the cosmos. She imagines that the overseers had a similar experience. The Black Star is not the true threat, however, but rather his god is, the Black Moon. Galanis realizes that they've heard the Black Moon before, as that's a Foundation passphrase, meaning that the overseers do know something about all of this. Galanis says that none of it matters anyways, as the Foundation will likely amnesticize them very soon. The Rajmata says to take this time to ask anything else that they were left wondering about, and after a brief pause, Galanis just laughs and says it's the most trivial thing, but they promised one of their researchers that they'd ask. They couldn't figure out why the three-prong army was called that. The Rajmata replies that a promise is a covenant, and it must be kept, explaining that they are named as such because of their insignia. Galanis says that they didn't see any heraldry in her memories, but the Rajmata replies that it was as powerful a symbol as Black Star is a name, and it's not to be used lightly. It has been a long, long time since that era, however, and she claps her hands. An attendant approaches, carrying a curved black dagger, reflecting the light around it. The attendant hands the dagger to the Rajmata and removes their robes, as the Rajmata uses the dagger and carves a symbol into the tender flesh of the attendant's back. Galanis is horrified, but as the attendant turns and shows their bleeding back to Galanis, there's a wide circle with 3 lines ending in sharp tips facing inward. Galanis realizes that the insignia of the 3-prong army
Foundation.
is the same as the Foundation's.
Yep.
The Rajmata bids goodbye to Galanis and says that for what it's worth, she suspects that this is not the end of their story.
So does that mean the administrator is the Black Star? Because that's why they haven't seen him in forever? That would, I mean, that would make sense, right?
Galanis was in a state of extreme distress as they were escorted to the helicopter, necessitating sedation. The sedative wore off approximately 1 hour after takeoff,
And I mean, would that also indicate, right, that, like, would the Davites know that the Foundation have that symbol, right? I don't know. It would make sense in certain ways though too, right? Because like none of the other factions' technologies and means worked against the Black Star's armies, which were just regular humans, and it was because of, I guess, they didn't believe in them. Could also be just like the Black Star's influence over them. I don't know. Anyway, let's finish this up.
and shortly thereafter, the helicopter went silent and disappeared from Foundation radar. We're provided a
Yeah.
transcript of the last recorded transmission. Galanis wakes and asks where they are and shakes their handcuffs. In the cockpit, the pilots do not react, and there are 3 soldiers at various positions throughout the helicopter, all armed and with covered faces. Galanis swears and says that they're not Alpha 1, as their patches aren't like Greaves. An unknown figure comments on Galanis being perceptive, and they see a figure in a suit sitting and facing them, appearing to be in his 50s, with a short beard and close-cropped gray hair. This is the administrator,
Yep.
and he says that he supposes someone owes Galanis an explanation. With that, we finally bring the saga of Mamjul and Korar to a close.
So like, okay. I guess the question would have to be then too, right? Like, okay, let's say from what we know that, the symbol that the Black Star's forces used is the same symbol as the Foundation, right? So the Foundation has its roots from the Black Star. Maybe the Black Star is the administrator, right? That's my theory at the moment. So if the situation, right, is that Meccan, the Scarlet, and Yaldabaoth, right, those gods were all about the anomalous. Like that's kind of what their children were. These anomalous means with the thaumaturgy and the Meccan technology and what I guess necromancy in this canon from the Sarkics. So then if the Black Moon and the Black Star and the Foundation are like I guess the opposites of that with controlling and containing these anomalies, right? If the Black Star is the administrator and he went through all the trouble in the past, essentially, of literally wiping them out and winning, why then is he allowing the Foundation to revive them? You know what I'm saying? Like, what what benefit does he have as the administrator, allowing or wanting or even guiding Foundation members to dig up this past and revive these factions? Unless he's just bored and, wants to have someone to fight again. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, right? Unless there's something else going on. Maybe it's a situation where he wants to revive these factions because he knows there's even a greater threat. Again, it could be something of high toss level stuff, pattern screamers, yada yada, extra worldly threats going on. And he's like, hey, man, you know, enemy of my enemy is my friend. I need you guys back because something even greater is coming, and we need to work together to stop it. I don't know. The only thing I can really think of at the moment. Let's finish up this video here. There's only a couple minutes left, but anyway.
Although it's hardly the end to this overall story. Originally, the Foundation stumbled upon the ancient city of Amani Ram, thinking they found a treasure trove, but instead gained a brand new enemy and knowledge of an old one. With the Davites, the Foundation hoped to avoid a similar predicament, empowering an ancient civilization and bringing it into the modern day. In the end, they did exactly that yet again, even losing one of their personnel to the other side in the process. But this time, things are a little different. The Davites are being brought back on the Foundation's terms, as allies, and Greaves is still committed to protecting the Foundation interests, in a sense. The Davic magic will certainly be a boon to the Foundation's war against the Mechanites and the Abominate, or the Black Moon, but it's unlikely that the Davites are going to sit nicely and idly by as this war goes on. What the Foundation certainly doesn't want is for the occult war to blossom into a full-scale war, with the public's knowledge, although I doubt the other combatants are as interested in preserving normalcy. Even more worrying is the Foundation actively contributing to SCP-140,
right,
a phenomenon that could lead to Davite supremacy in the long run.
Like I said, they're playing the
We're
long
also
game.
given one last bombshell of information at the end, with the casual revelation that the three-prong army somehow ended up becoming the SCP Foundation, along with using the Black Moon deity as one of their most well-known passphrases. I won't begin to speculate as to how that happened, but we do know that the three-prong army consisted entirely of baseline humans, and they were the conquerors at the end, as the other civilizations went into decline. Galanis is likely to learn a lot more about the specifics of the Foundation's history from the Administrator, who swooped in out of nowhere to rescue Galanis from a hasty memory wipe. We'll also learn all about how the Nalka, or the Sarkites, fared against the Black Star's army, and what they've been up to in the meantime. Will the Foundation find another ally in them? An enemy?
Doubtful.
Or perhaps something in between? For now, the Foundation's got enough on their plate, along with the author of this saga, Rounderhouse. But this is certainly shaping up to be something quite special.
Yeah. All right. No quote, I'm assuming, here, as we haven't had in a while. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you have it. I mean, pretty good conclusion to the Mamjul Korar story here in this Red Tape series. Pretty much went somewhat of how I thought it was going to go, with Greaves becoming the new avatar for the Scarlet and reviving the dream. The Davites getting what they want, them playing the long game with the SCP-140 book, that rewrites their history coming into play. I was waiting for that reference to be in here, and there we go. But yeah, them essentially playing the long game and setting up multiple ways for them to continue to exist Um, the main thing, though, I mean, really was at the very end there, right? You know, the revelation of the three-pronged army's symbol being the SCP Foundation symbol. Um, it wasn't until like the circle, when she said the circle, right? Like they had mentioned a circular symbol before, which was making me think of the Hang King, right? Because the Hang King is described as like a hole-shaped god or something along those lines. So I was wondering if somehow the Abominate was some kind of reference to the Hang King in some way. Maybe Alagata might play some kind of role in this as part of the Abominate, because I don't know. I mean, there's some strange stuff with Alagata and the Ambassador and the Lords there and all that kind of stuff, so it could kind of fit in a certain way. But once she said the circle, I was like, oh, there's three prongs and there's a circle. That's gonna be the Foundation. Before that, I was wondering if it was gonna be some kind of trident thing, and it was gonna be like some other kind of faction symbol, like maybe the Chaos Insurgency in some way that I was unfamiliar with. But so I mean, that reveal is a pretty big twist in the story. And so, like I said, it seems like then the logical conclusion would be, from things they've mentioned in this, that they haven't seen the administrator in a while, and the administrator has access to this information, and they're kind of bringing up the administrator. It would seem like a logical conclusion to connect that maybe the administrator is the Black Star. And so if that's the case, right, now maybe the Foundation is doing things, the O5 Council's doing things on their own without the administrator's approval, you know? Who knows? The O5 Council does weird stuff. But the question would then have to be, right, like, if the administrator is the Black Star, and they had gone through the process of literally wiping out these factions, then what is the benefit of reviving them in modern time? Because it's only unless there is some kind of greater threat on the horizon and he's bringing them back as a means to try to unite them against a greater foe, right? Enemy of my enemy is my friend. As a show of good faith, you know, I am bringing you guys back into modern times. I'm reviving your civilizations as a show of good faith. And in return, I need your help to defeat this greater foe. And then once this greater foe is dealt with, we can figure out where we go from there, kind of a situation, right? If it's not that, then what else would it be? The only other thing I can think of is like, hey, he's bored, been around for thousands of years, he's got nothing else to do, bring him back, so let's fight again. Let's see who can win, you know? I don't know. But that is a pretty big twist there. And that also kind of goes into like the idea of, again, as I'd mentioned, you know, the three gods, Meccan, the Scarlet, and Yaldabaoth, are all about these, you know, anomalous means. Anomalous means through technology, anomalous means through biomancy and thaumaturgy, anomalous means through necromancy and other things. You know, we'll learn what other things the Sarkics, Nalkans, whatever they do. And then, of course, the Foundation is anti that. They're about containing those anomalies and having a world of normalcy for humans, where like human is like the baseline existence. It's interesting that the Black Star is an anomaly then in and of himself, and is one that is so powerful that the other forces can't contend with him. Reality Bender is so powerful he's able to literally sink continents. Kind of a situation. Now, is it through technological means? Right? You know? Is there some kind of technological means that he uses to enhance himself in some kind of way? Because the story of how Mamjul was sunk, you know, the Black Star, I think, sat for 6 days and 6 nights or something along those lines. You gain enough power to do this. And, you know, with reality anchors or whatever, you know, was he sitting there using some kind of reality enhancing technology or whatever to, you know, give himself more power so he could do this? You know, I don't know. But it's also interesting that in this canon, the Foundation has its own god too, right? That's not something that's ever really been brought up in anything else that I know of. So yeah, I'm a lot more questions posed with this episode here moving forward. So eager to see where it's gonna go. I think there's a couple of episodes in between before we get into the Sarkic story with their city, Black Atom, and I believe, you know, that story, that little series in the Red Tape series is the conclusion, unless of course the author has more they're writing on and that's just the end of what's currently there. There'll be more in the future, but eager to learn more. So I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next time. But yeah, that was SCP-001 Mamjul Korar Part 5, the finale of the Davite storyline in this series. Links will be down below, as always, in the description to playlist here for this Red Tape series from the Exploring series. So yeah, be sure to go over there and check it out if you want to watch the original videos of the Exploring series without my commentary and reaction. Feel free, obviously, to go over there and do that. Please do me a favor, you know, hit that sub button on his channel if you haven't already and show the man some love. He definitely deserves it. He makes a lot of great content. If you'd like to join us as I'm doing these reactions live, like I am right now with my YouTube members, glad to have you guys come in and hang out and add your 2 cents to the conversations. Yeah, if you've been around the channel for a while, you want to take your sport to the next level, check all that stuff out. But thank you guys very much for watching this video. It's a long one. Like I said before at the beginning of the video, I will put the Mamjul series together as one long video, as well as I've been releasing them as individual parts. So if you want to watch the super long reaction, I'll get that up as soon as I can. But yeah, looking forward to continuing this. Thank you for watching. Consider leaving a like and a sub. That helps me and the channel grow, and it lets me and the YouTube algorithm know that you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see some more. So appreciate you watching here to the very end. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you on the next one.